Okay, during the 6 a.m. turn, the Confederates were able to push their way across the bridge because they had shoved the Union units back far enough that they could form up into column, move in, form back into line, and engage. They can't do that if they're going to be in a zone of control without taking fire. So the advantage there, of course, is I can conduct long-range fire to drive them away. And the reserve corps here, it was so beaten up that I pretty much knew that I would push it out of the way. I didn't realize quite how badly beaten it was as the Confederates maybe, but the Union should have known how weak that was. They're trying to provide some kind of defense here. Crittenden got his orders, but he's not active yet. And things look pretty ugly. Yeah, Confederates are hitting, the Union line is just so weakly spread out. Sometimes I think trying to defend terrain objectives like something like this is pointless. You really just need to create a clump somewhere. But the problem is the enemy can find some way around, grab those terrain objectives, and then sit. I could have sat, say, with a defensive line across here, and then Longstreet could sit somewhere back here, and we would pretty much, force the Union Army to disengage without a supply line, which would be a painful situation in terms of the operational side of the game. In terms of what we're actually, doing on the battlefield, well, that would probably force the Union to make an attack against the Confederate position up here. So, it looked like no good options except maybe fall back as they historically did and try to defend just the routes off the map. But that, I don't know, that seemed so weak. That's surrendering basically. Partway through the 6:30 turn, the Union was unable to adequately defend their reserve corps here, and they slipped some units behind. They're going to get some flanking fire back here, and they also knocked the headquarters back. This position has just been overrun, essentially. One thing I wanted to note, kind of at random, when I played the LOB stuff, since it's kind of fresh on my mind, what did I do? Last Chance for Victory up there. I noticed a bunch of bounciness to not the camera, that's normal, to the way the lines kind of held up. One person would go, their troops would march forward, and their lines would look pretty good, but their opponent would get kind of thrown back. In terms of, which more accurately, you don't see that here. And I was wondering, gee, am I just not remembering that from the CWB? No, it's not a part of the game. And when it's got to do with the weird kind of integration of movement and fire combat in LOB. In LOB, you can move your units and fire, but if you move into a zone, into firing range and are going to fire, you take defensive fire. Okay, that's great. If my unit gets pushed back, I can throw another unit into the line, whatever. So as long as I've got fairly solid units, I push forward. But then the defender, who may have been taking hits on his units for a while, is going to just fall back immediately from there. Here, the lines seem somewhat more stable. I think the morale checks in that game were a little bit more vicious than they are in CWB. So you end up with what looks like a more reasonable and stable firing line. Which one represents the reality better is hard to tell. It's just when there's snapshots in CWB, hey, this line here, they look like two lines standing across from each other shooting the shit out of each other, as opposed to this weird kind of ping-pong game that was going on in LOB, which really kind of troubled me, although the end result might have been accurate. And an emergency corps retreat, which only really represents one unit and some artillery, but the 14th Corps pulled their 3rd Division out, and now Wilder has also deployed on their flank. 21st Corps is not moving yet. I don't know if I have anything. I gotta check to see if I have anything that can recover here. And the Confederates are slowly pushing their attack forward. They're not rushing forward head on. And really there was only engagement here and here. The way I do line of sight, that's eligible. I'm not sure if it was in Barren Victory, but I think in the later games that's acceptable. The problem being that this hex would count as a full forest hex as opposed to a woods, whatever that means. I didn't look at the rules, but there's no terrain rules for woods. I think what that just means is that it's supposed to be clear line of sight. The later rules say, hey, if you can trace a line without hitting blocking terrain, that's good. You know, that it's not full hex terrain anymore. It went against the Confederates. Here, Kershaw had low ammo, which was a dumb idea to put that unit out front where it could get shot. I got some artillery that could fire that I should have fired off. Let's see. 5 guns at 3 hexes. Let me do that. That's a 3. Let's get all kind of dice. We'll do one of these here. Confederates pop off an ammo because the chart's screwed up and the 10s are in, you know, the 0 is essentially up here. You don't have the smoothness that you'd expect there. And this is hitting the 3-3-14. We haven't done a combat in a while, if at all. What did I say? It was a 2? No, 3. So that's going to be a hit. Mark that off. This is what you go through in each thing. 3-3-14 comes over here. I check this. 3-3-14 took a hit. The morale's A. So now I check. This didn't matter. We didn't need a rounding roll. A is not going to straggle on a 3. And 43 on an A is not going to have any trouble. That's not a wrecked unit. Anyway, I did go through the up to the Army status, and actually the Confederates, both sides said nothing's really changed this turn. This was not a dramatic turn. The Confederates actually dropped to a 2. The Union went up to a 4. The Union feels like they have a more contiguous line, maybe? I don't know. And the Confederates are like, why are we slowing down, man? Again, it's hard to justify how those are. So far I haven't made a call on it yet, just because I don't feel like either side's felt like they've really trashed the other army enough to have a good chance. You don't know what your enemy's value is here. If it's more than a 2, which seems fairly likely, there's no chance of a problem at all. But as it turns out, if the Union wanted to take a risk here, they would actually have a chance. And there's a significant number of wrecked Confederate divisions that there might be a chance that Bragg would just leave the battlefield at this point if you made the check on him. You know, that's what you get when you get lousy leaders on the board. Anyway, no real recovery this turn because both sides are moving with their forces. And next turn, I think we're going to see sort of an all-out hit here by the Confederates. But I didn't want to do it this turn because it would have come in kind of piecemeal. I'm also kind of hoping to cut this flank, so the Union's probably going to try to refuse it further. That's some of the flexibility of having a core, a big core, is that you can kind of pull that in towards that core. And then this is a loose unit, so I don't have to fight here since I don't have... I've got some anchor here, though. I think these guys are sitting in field works, so I kind of want to hold on to that as long as I can. I tried to give Polk some orders. He didn't want to listen. Well, the fighting's really heating up over here. Currently, losses are at about 13,000 each, which is, as is usual for me with the CWB games, a little higher than you'd expect. The units just seem to push a little harder than they did historically. I found my feeling was the LOB did a better job of this. It's still better than like the Great Battles of American Civil War, at least the old TSS game, which didn't put any restriction on how you use units. And then I had a horrible problem. After I rolled for damn status, I don't know what I was reaching for, but I ended up slipping this, and it slid under everything, and boom. And I try to rebuild that situation. I've got the losses except for the artillery, but I'm not quite sure I have, all the breastworks in the right place. I don't think that matters too much because I really doubt that we're going to see fighting down here, but I got to rebuild all those units. As we hit 9 a.m., the situation for the Union looks really iffy, in the sense that, well, I'll be able to push into here, but a unit that was here was just destroyed. That was only one strength point left. I've got flank shots coming in on this. Now, the Union can move up and get some flank shots on these guys, but they're not going to get the big morale bonus because those guys are bloodlusted. They will do some damage, though. The Confederates over in here held off from pushing further. You can see there's holes in the line there. The Union may have to pull out of here. If they don't, they're suffering. They're risking being really destroyed, wrecked through, converging fire from different flanks. If the Confederates are able to push that much closer, the Confederate units are a little too weakened to be able to effectively, say, do close combat here. But if they can catch a few of these guys in a little pocket, that's a good way to wreck things pretty badly there. Right now our casualties are at what? 14.5 here, 14.3 here, approximately equal. But the Confederates can afford to take a few more casualties just because they got a bigger force here. As to the hard choice of whether the Union wanted to withdraw, they chose not to. Primarily because they have a couple artillery that were engaged. Now, trying to withdraw engaged artillery, whether you do it voluntarily or not, it was left to their choice because 14th Corps didn't break. Wilder's got to worry. He's an independent unit, but he might... he's a broken unit now, so he might not want to stick around. I felt like I had to leave this here rather than deal with the gun loss table. I'll deal with that when I break, basically, is my feeling. And, giving this up I wouldn't have my guns right in the line because the movement point cost would be too high, so I'd have to fall back another hex later. That would begin to degrade this trench line that I've got here. Now, of course, a full retreat is going to definitely leave that exposed, but I want to hold this position as long as I kind of can, and then maybe fall back to here as the next place. The reserve, I could have thrown this unit in with one strength point into the fight. Instead, another reserve unit got disintegrated here. The reason I didn't do that is I took a straggler recovery check instead, figuring that, it's better. One strength point's probably going to disappear anyway. I'd rather build up some strength back here and not throw that unit into the line. Problem is, the headquarters is here, it's exposed, it's probably going to get overrun unless he gets an initiative roll and gets the hell out of there. Okay, we just finished the 9 a.m. turn, and the Confederates busted through everywhere. First of all, they destroyed the Wilder unit, stretching across here. They just destroyed it by surrounding it. That puts some risk here if the Union can throw something in that's rear, but there's so little back here, just this little weak reserve unit that I don't know if it has sufficient orders. Yeah, it does to protect this at least. This could have fallen. This would have been big because it's one of the two Union Army supply trains, essentially, just because there's so much ammunition loaded with the reserve for whatever reason in this battle. But instead, I decided destroying this unit was more important because that kind of caves this whole position in. It's got to pull out. There's no question there in my mind. I also broke through here, which is another reason. This is charges happening against weak Union units coming from rear hexes. I was able to blast my way through. There's some remainder still there. Casualties right now, not significantly different. 15,800 to 15,400. You know, we're seeing about, in terms of hard casualties, about the same numbers. The Confederates have been able to mass a lot of local superiority. They have overall superiority, but they've been able to mass a local superiority against that. But it's good defensive positioning with those entrenchments, etc. So, I don't know if this guy got to fire. Shit. I don't think he did because I didn't take that into account. Let me do that. I'll come back in a moment because I think something very exciting, well, I know something very exciting is going to occur. I don't know which way it's going to go. So I don't think this guy fired either, but I left him out of the fire and just took care of him. One hit was enough. It broke this unit, sent it routing. All right, so what's exciting? Well, what's exciting is the Confederates are going to call for a Union check, status check, but we're at the end of the turn period. Confederate Army status is 3, Union Army status is 3. Confederates say my position has significantly improved, and the Union definitely is saying theirs did not. Theirs went the opposite. With a 3, it's not possible that the status check can work. Why am I calling it now? Not because I know this, certainly. It's because Longstreet's corps is just about ready to crap out. I've got to roll a 5 each turn to keep it rolling, this super core thing. And if that stops, my attack stops completely. And then the Union can pull back and start recovering, and the situation isn't going to keep collapsing. If I thought I had a good chance to keep rolling on with the attack, I would hold off here, because I don't feel like I've hit the Union too many turns in pain. But let's take a quick look. So, unfortunately, the Union rolls high. What? No, high is bad for them. And the Confederates also roll high, so they don't improve. So the Union is going to be making a check. And now we do what we've never done before. And I probably don't know the rules well enough for it. Hey, no big shock there. Okay, let's take a look at what Rosecrans thinks about the situation. All is lost. Now, one thing to note, this doesn't generate an automatic rout. It's not like, you know, a Great Battles of History type thing where, hey, I got the points, or Men of Iron, I'm gone, I lose. He's got to withdraw. And we'll see what the effects are, but the personality might cause, it allows Thomas to do this delaying action, which he historically did. So let's see what we got here. How many wrecked divisions do we have? That's the first thing we got to count. So, it's a lot. 1, 2, 3. This is not considered a division in any sense. It's not as many as I thought. 4, 5. My status is only 2, so I need an 11 or higher to fail this. Not very likely. And I do not. So the battle continues as it was. The Confederates have used one status check. I thought the odds were a little better, you know. And we're on the 9:30 turn. And I'm going to plug my thing in and take a break. Extricating 14th Corps units was not as easy as I thought. I pulled the artillery out, pulled back to this hex, and basically formed a line cutting down through here. Now you can see some units got pushed back. But the Confederates aren't in great shape either, so some of their units got shoved out of the way, or dissolved, actually, back here. So it all works out pretty well in terms of, it looks like I can get away, maybe. I don't know. But there aren't a lot of Confederate units to really hinder with that. Luckily, Thomas is a good enough leader that even though there are a couple of divisions of his corps gone, that's 2 out of 4, puts him on the 2 table. It's on the 5. I think there's a +3. I rolled in case there was +2 and didn't get that either. But essentially, he's incapable of failing in his defense, even with the amount of suffering or punishment that he's taken so far. But now we're up to the Confederate turn, and there are some units in danger. Like this guy does not have a retreat route right now without taking fire, but he's no longer being hit from the rear. Although that could be changed by moving into here, which might be a good move anyhow. Anyway, things have turned into this swirling chaos, kind of like, if you remember in my Musket and Pike, this doesn't happen often in this game for me. In Musket and Pike, when I first started playing that, the Cav was this total chaos. Well, this is what this fight in the woods is turning into, with people turning flanks left and right. It's just, everything's so disorganized and chaotic, because the Confederates are trying to punch their way through this, and they were hoping to get the victory last turn, that they wanted to cause enough damage. Well, they didn't, and they don't want to take another chance because it didn't work last time. They want to hammer the Union some more, but they may not have a good shot at that. Anyway, we'll take care of their turn next. No, I don't think I've ever seen a case like this. Certainly not in a long time, since, you know, maybe the first few years I was playing these games, the CWB series, that I've seen 2 armies so wrecked in a fight. The Union 14th Corps is just trying to ooze its way out, and it's getting some neat little shots, although those get canceled out. Like, it positioned itself to get some enfilades in here, and those got taken away from it. But wow, and the Longstreet's attack is equally wrecked. Both forces are just, they want to get away. Anyway, I still haven't checked to see if any of these can recover. I did everything else, but I got to check straggler. Theoretically, you're supposed to put little straggler recovery markers everywhere where stragglers can recover. I fudged that. So, for example, this would have actually been allowed to recover stragglers, but I'm not going to allow it because it just had an emergency corps retreat. I change little rules like that all the time, and that's, I don't know, just part of the nature of how I play. Union side of the turn, I forgot to mention, the 21st Corps is moving, ready to take up its defensive position, presumably over here somewhere. The whole front has collapsed over there, so we'll probably be falling back to this line and see if we can take that river or stream line there. Longstreet kept coming, and there was still goodies to hit. There's still a couple of Union units here and here getting hit in the rear all over the place. Some of them are disintegrating. I did status upgrades. The Confederates said they were staying about equal, and they went up. The Union still thinks it's doing poorly, and they're down to a 1. They made a status check on the Confederates, which did nothing because of the high army status. They were hoping maybe they could force Bragg to give up this attack and leave the battlefield. I think that's what happens when he gets his failure, which ends up being essentially a full rout or a full loss. Not a rout. You don't see that much in Civil War. All right, onward. Mess in the middle. It's winding down, but it's getting it's still interesting. There were a couple of units, this one and this one, for the Union, that were trapped kind of right up in the enemy lines, both disordered. This one moved forward, took some fire, but the neat thing was the Union was able to position these 2 units behind some Confederate units that were dealing with those. and kind of rescue the units. This one, this is some artillery. It's probably hosed, assuming the Confederates don't pull out, which may be a big assumption. We can, I guess, make that roll right now. Right now, the Confederates, there's 7 divisions, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are wrecked. So if we look up 6 out of 7, that puts us on the 3 chart. Longstreet's a 4 leader, so we end up needing an 8 to continue. And the attack will continue. In addition, you can see the Cav move, or the 21st Corps moving into place, so that's going to make life a little bit more difficult on them. I also sent some orders out to Crook's Cav down here. This is kind of weird because one of his units I had sent over with the Cav Corps is coming back. This is Minty's regiment coming back to join him. He's got orders to go take up the defense of the Lee's Bridge area. Now that that's empty, that looks like just too tempting a target for Polk's whole force to come swinging around and then double enfilade on us, and that would just be terrible, right? I know it's not what's going to happen, but that's okay. As of 11 a.m., that current battle's over, and, you know, honestly, I think the Confederate capability for an assault is mostly done. The 14th had actually pushed up and engaged in this space, but then not to much effect, to just claim the trench line there. And then Longstreet pulled out. And right now, there's orders over here to Forrest's Cav, Forrest was wounded long ago, to support the left flank of Longstreet's attack. Well, there's no attack anymore. Once he accepts those orders and figures out what they mean in this condition, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow that to make a move to extend the flank defensively, and then he's going to throw the orders away and drop into defensive, standard situation. He doesn't necessarily have to follow that. It can be situational. If it doesn't make sense for him to link up anymore, I'll just allow him to throw the orders away. But when I set up orders like that, support orders, one of the things is there's a danger if he's just following support orders, and I've used this to, really good effect, but I think it's cheating. If you can set up defensive support orders, and you could say, okay, this corps is going to make the attack, and then this corps supports its right flank on all attacks, and this corps supports its left flank on all attacks. You've essentially created this special case that Longstreet has for this scenario with the wing, where he can actually, unify it into a single corps. Yes, the different units can break down at different times. That feels a little too powerful. I've used that in looking for it here. Do I not have a box for it? Yeah, I don't think I have a box. Austerlitz, the Napoleonic Brigade series game, to coordinate an attack all along the front by the Allied units. It really convinced me, hey, I'm cheating here. This is not reasonable. But if that's not allowed, then what is? Certainly you should be allowed to support an attack in the sense that I don't want to keep fighting if he's done, Geez, I don't know where this is. I'll pretend it's on 70. It's probably not going to matter. Anyway, so that's why I have to do a little bit of dancing to get around, some of those rules, situations. And truly, line of battle doesn't fix any of that. You still have a lot of interpretation to how to handle the order system. So if you're not up for interpretation, if you don't trust your opponent's view and yours to be in enough alignment, this may not be the right design for you. Solo, it's great, though, there's no question. And I've never had a big problem playing it opposed, to tell you the truth. I've had people who, I feel like take more liberties than I do generally, and people who take less. And, I don't know. Even when I'm doing something that I now kind of consider cheating, there was no big deal about it. It wasn't. It was just kind of a, well, how did you manage to get them all coordinated? And then when I explained it, he kind of agreed that made sense. So, you know, it's an easy way to interpret the rules, but I think one that, with more experience, I kind of decide, you know, I don't think that's the intention there. As we hit noon, I think it's about time for the two armies to reconsider what they're doing. The fight over here has ended. The 21st Corps is coming into play here. That's threatening to the rebels. So I think what I'm doing is I'm sending Longstreet down here to get new orders from Bragg. Those orders perhaps will be covering the bridge, the crossings of the Chickamauga, probably pulling this cav back as well to try to cover. I don't think I can cover all of this territory here. I don't think that's terribly important. Let me see if C is worth victory points. It may be, in which case I probably should cover it. No, just D, E, and F, which is why I pulled back out of there. So that's this corner down here. I'm interested in, as the Confederates, in the Union corner. Neither one seems terribly likely to be able to be taken. So the river line seems like a good option. I've taken somewhat less losses. It's about the same, it really is. About equivalent losses to the Union. And I just don't see the Confederates capable of launching another attack. However, if the Union leaves the battlefield, that'd be cool. And this may be the time to give them another test. And likewise for the Union, if the Confederates leave the battlefield now, it would be a good idea. I did my rolls, and this is going to be the second of the checks. The Union is very vulnerable. They're at 1. The Confederates are not. So we're not going to be hitting these rolls again, but we do have to check to see if Rosecrans has had enough. And in this case, let's see how many divisions he's lost. Total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions down. Status of 1, and 8 or more is needed to break. And that does not happen. So that is the end of the panic rolls for this game. Both sides have used their 2 calls. The Union does have the possibility of launching another attack, an attack. I have the 20th and 21st Corps are both in fairly nice position. If the 21st can get orders and get moving, running around here, they could come up behind the Confederate Army and cause real problems towards that supply space. And the 20th, I'm a little bit more reluctant to send them charging, but this doesn't necessarily look that strong. Anywhere else I have to force the river, and that makes life tough. So depending on how I feel, I might end up launching the 20th up this way. The 14th is going to have to recover. They're in a really terrible situation right now. And that's cool because Thomas doesn't like attacking. We know that. Okay, looks like my battery wasn't hooked up properly. Crap. All right, so we've pushed ahead through the 2 o'clock turn to 2:30. There's a pile of Confederate cav getting there. Not much has happened, just some recovery overall. Some entrenchment down here for the Confederates. Not here because they're awaiting orders to pull out. So again, like I like to consider, you know, if Longstreet is trying to get his units organized to actually follow some orders, they're not going to be busy entrenching during that time. The Union Army, 21st Corps started moving. That's got an outflanking operation to take place here. There are other orders that have been given out. 20th Corps has been given orders, I think, to kind of swing around this way and attack. And the Cav has been given orders to fly around and try to cross at this bridge over, way over here, and get down around behind the Confederate units. I don't know if I have enough time for much of that to happen, but we're certainly going to see a little bit of fighting happening right in here. 3 p.m. and the Union hits here, and they dissolved a couple of units that were really non-existent, basically. All of Stewart's division is gone. Now, there's not a whole hell of a lot of it left, even on paper. We're talking about these guys here. They're all permanently wrecked, and none of them's bigger than a B if they come back. They've taken a lot of heavy fighting in that assault. But Preston over here is trying to cover things. Longstreet not falling back still. We got some Cav over here that I'm trying to give some orders to that make some sense. Doesn't make any sense for me to be there unless I'm pushing forward trying to break my way through here, which I don't think makes any sense. If I want to use this Cav to try to run, and I consider these kind of dicky moves, but grabbing, these supply chains links back here, I could do that, and there's a good chance the Union wouldn't be able to react. That's why I consider it really kind of dicky. It's not in the spirit of the game, in my view, but on the other hand, there's a certain degree to which that kind of cutting the other guy's supply line off is the intention of this scenario. So it's kind of a weird, it puts me in a conundrum in this scenario. But yeah, the 20th Corps is beginning to make its move. These Union units aren't really likely to do much. They're not that much better off than the Confederates. Both sides have had a chance to rest. The Confederates probably took a little bit more damage on their units. Remember, the brunt of the fighting for the Union was taken by the 14th Corps, but 20th Corps was involved in some fighting. The attack over here, I believe, and 21st Corps up here was also weakened through fighting over there. But they're in much, much better shape than Longstreet's Super Corps. On the Union side of the 330 turn, they push away the rest of Buckner's corps. We've got one brigade kicking around there, still capable of doing something, but the headquarters has gotten emergency retreated. Most of the rest of it has dissolved. I think that's artillery. Yeah, there's just this one unit left, or one stack left, which may dissolve due to the emergency retreat. All right, now we enter 4:30, and the Confederate attempt to disengage has finally taken place. Longstreet took his orders, and he's crossing the river. The problems, there's a lot. One, I'm under pressure now, and it's a lot harder to disengage under this kind of pressure. And two, the Cav doesn't have orders to withdraw. I may have to do an emergency corps retreat, which I can do, at will. But right now, I'm still kind of following my orders, defending the flank there, at least the orders that I kind of see myself as. But I can't move my headquarters, and that's about ready to fall. There's artillery being exposed in places like here that's probably going to get destroyed. Overall, it looks pretty bad. The only real saving grace is, well, one, it's going to be tough to cross the rivers, and two, the Union doesn't have orders to cross the rivers. This was mainly a force intended to pin and wreck and cause disruption here, and there's probably not enough time for me to obtain additional orders, although I did send Thomas back to Rosecrans, wherever he is, over here, with the thought of, well, maybe one more hammer blow against this thing will just demolish it completely. And that may be the case, but even that, it's unlikely. Armies don't get moving in one turn in this. Now, on the other side, there isn't all that much time left in the game as a whole. Maybe not enough for the Confederates to run up here. I gave them orders actually to run up here and make it down here, but they could just get lucky and get in there, and there's very little I can do with the Union to stop that. because I don't have the river line completely garrisoned or anything like that. I was too busily trying to defend the center and now trying to offend the center, as it were. Well, here we are at 5 p.m. turn, and I'm seeing a route the nature of which I have never seen in a CWB game. Part of it is the Confederates were just so weakened on their attack that now being hit by two fresher units that could maintain the attack for a little bit. They weren't just flung back immediately. I mean, this part of the Confederate line is solid comparatively to everything else on the field, but there's no real chance to bring them into play. Maybe I can, but I don't know. But also the river line has created such a hellish situation because there's so few places I can get away through that it's caused route throughs and such not where there's just nothing to hold the other side of the line at this point. Now, if the Union can get some sort of initiative roll or something to cross the river, I think this is going to be a massive defeat for the Confederates. But they don't have orders to do that. So without the initiative roll, they're not going across. They've got orders pretty much to stop up the entryways. Likewise, though, if someone like Law could get an initiative, he could storm up and hit the 20th Corps in the rear. Chances are they would be able to defend. They would see it coming and be able to swing around and deploy against that threat. But so I don't know how terrible that would be because 20th Corps is not that hosed. Granted, the Confederate units over here are in better shape, but not that much better shape. The main thing is this was so ready for collapse. I wasn't expecting that. Status doesn't take effect anymore, but at this point as the Confederates, I'm thinking I gotta get out of here. Pushing to 5:30 p.m. The Union forces, this is almost like shooting fish in a barrel, but I'm out of bullets. Too many of my units are low ammo, so I'm kind of waiting for the ammo to show up. There's not a lot of time left. There's just 3 turns left. It's kind of a pity because this is a way to rack up score. I got them almost up, the Confederates almost up to 20,000 losses, but the Union is almost at 19,000. So, this is not some kind of blowout in terms of numbers. But overall, I think we could just stop it here and say, yeah, the Union won. There's probably not enough time for this cav to make the maneuver that it would like to make, to skirt around and grab these. There's not enough time for this cav to make the maneuver it would like, and it would have to fight through some of Buckner's units, which probably wouldn't be hard to push away. There's not much there, or anywhere really left. Okay, well, starting off with the 5:30 turn, the Union rolled a corps attack failure on a 2 for Crittenden's 21st Corps. I came within 1 of a failure over on McCook's Corps. He only rolled a 4. If he had rolled 1 less, both corps would have failed. Honestly, I don't see much point to trying to handle whatever is going on here. The Union is not going to succeed in crossing and taking more hexes. They're probably going to cause a few more casualties to the Confederates, but I think things are pretty much decided now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tally up the points. Not that I think they're particularly important. I think it's pretty clear that the Union won this battle, but I'd like to see the numerical results, how well they conform to my feelings on that. That's why you shouldn't trust point systems. They do try to capture something, but casualties were close enough, and the ranges are so large that nothing was going to change. It's not like, we were going to see a 5-point switch here or anything. Both sides got 25 points for that. The problem comes to permanently wrecked corps. the Confederates, Hill, let's see, they lost quite a bit actually, but Hill's corps is wrecked. Yeah, actually it may not even be. Looks like I got three wrecked out of 6. That counts as, in terms of total brigades, that counts as wrecked by this system. The Reserve Corps, wrecked. So that gets us to 10. Buckner, wrecked. That gets us up to, okay, I miscounted. That gets us up to 14. And then the First Corps is okay. They have more unwrecked than wrecked. The Cav is wrecked though. That's Forrest's Cav. So I think that gets us up to 17. I don't know how I got to 10 there. 4, 8. Yeah, now I'm miscounting. Polk is not wrecked. Hill is 4. The Reserve. The Reserve gets me up to 7. Buckner gets me to 11. And the Cav gets me to 14. I wrote 10 for some reason. The Union, the 14th Corps is wrecked. And that's their big one. That's worth 10 big points. But nothing else is completely wrecked except the tiny little Reserve Corps, which is only worth 2. So, you know, it ends up being a very close battle. And we knew that it was in terms, just because the casualties are close. And you know, units, it has to be distributed fairly well. I would say the thing that didn't happen is pushing the Confederates behind this river strikes me as significantly better than what actually happened, right? There's no real threat to Chattanooga at this point. The Union controls their supply lines. They control the field. Would you call this a draw? Not really, because the Confederates failed. They had to dislodge the Union. Now, it's not like the Union won some massive victory, although it felt that way over here. I'll have to tell you, the early part of the battle felt like it was a massive Confederate victory when the 14th Corps was just being demolished. So that's what you have here. Now, usually, I think I talked about this earlier briefly. Usually when I play these CWB games that have a lot of woods, they don't feel very interesting to me. But this one has these neat road pathways going through the woods, which really, yeah, there's so much woods, and so much of the battle is happening in the woods. It's not like Shiloh, where the Confederates are rushing through the woods and then crushing out into a clearing or something like that where there's a fight, and it feels very constrained. Here I felt like I had the whole map to play with. I had big maneuver opportunities. Maybe too big in the sense that, you know, the Confederates could have swung around and grabbed these, or the Union could have maybe snuck in behind, although that's much less likely. Where the terrain objectives weren't necessarily well defended by me, at least with the Union, but you know, the opportunity to prevent an action like that seems pretty clear. A defense of these few fords, the Chickamauga and its crossings is so key to whatever strategy you have, as are the roads. You're not going to be crashing through long stretches of forest very quickly. So anyway, this ended up a lot more interesting to me than most of the CWB games. I love CWB as a system. I especially loved Thunder at the Crossroads. And my feeling is that this may be up near the top of my picks for that. I was happily pleased with Champion Hill recently, I think, but which I had never really remembered. But it's kind of a smaller battle. I had never really remembered being very pleased with. I enjoyed that more than I expected recently. And then this one, you know, when I pulled it out and saw those forests, I said, shit, I'm not going to like this as much as, you know, as much as Thunder, certainly, but as much as the few that I really do love. But Actually, the fact that this has those old panic rules in it and supports them. Embrace an Angry Wind, which is up there, has the panic rules as well, but it doesn't actually use them. There's no personality profile, and there's all kinds of other kinds of rules to handle Hood. I found those very interesting, and I'm thinking that maybe the reprint couldn't be done because it wasn't just a straight, okay, we'll just translate this to the modern graphics. By the way, I like the graphics on this one. I like the kind of more old school counters, although I do find them kind of difficult to read to my eyes nowadays. There's not the color support that the new ones have. I also like the way the terrain looks. I know that people gripe about the older CWB games. I actually find this one pretty attractive to me. If you look too closely, though, you start seeing these sharp cutoffs, and that's kind of weird. It may be because there's less of the orangish terrain in the middle of the board. The valley idea and everything just looks nice. Anyway, overall, I'm pretty damn impressed with this one. I'll send this up, and no, we're not going to jump right to another CWB. I think we're going to go a bit earlier this time.